I met Andre through Tinder on January 31st, 2018. I was new to Tinder, and he was the second guy I decided to message back. I had just signed up after being divorced for 2 years. It was a new experience for me. I'd been married for 23 years. My marriage was not a great one, and it took a lot for me to put myself in a vulnerable position. He approached me first and said in his message, "Do you know why I liked your profile? It's your song, Meant to Be. It's my favorite song also." I agreed to meet Andre at Starbucks. We met that afternoon for coffee. He was a real chatterbox, with stories of a life full of adventure and adversity. My initial impression was that he was a bit over the top. We walked along the lake with our coffees, and he told me he had just returned from 6 years working overseas in Vietnam and was only here for a short time while he got his visas and passports renewed. He said he was staying at the local hostel because he liked to travel that way and meet new people. He was only planning to be in Kelowna for a couple of days. He said he was considering moving back to Canada, and a friend had told him Kelowna was a nice place to live, so he wanted to come and check it out, look at boats, maybe buy one that he could live on. We spent about an hour together and then agreed to meet later that evening for a movie. We went to a movie. He was a pure gentleman. I took him back to the hostel after the movie and he gave me a hug goodnight. By the time I got home, he had already messaged me saying that he was so thankful to have met me and that he thought I was very beautiful. We spent the next few days together, and he brought his laptop with him to show me pictures. We spent hours talking about his world travels, past relationships, and his work. He said he had been married to a dentist in Bellingham, Washington for 12 years, and their marriage broke up 6 years ago, and that's why he went overseas to get away from the heartache. He showed me a picture of her. He said he had no children because she never wanted children. And he also said he had abusive addictive parents who beat him and raised him, and he ended up moving in with his grandparents when he was 13 and then left home when he was 17. He said he traveled to Alberta and met someone who introduced him to the oil patch life. He worked for years on the rigs, or says he worked for years on the rigs, and then was offered a safety position in Vietnam, working for an offshore oil company. He said he had to go there to learn Vietnamese and then restructure the safety and security of the company. He then showed me several pictures of thousands of dollars spread out on his bed and lots of gold bars. He showed lots of attention to detail and asked me a lot of questions about my ex and my past relationship. I really felt at ease with him, as he seemed genuinely interested in my life and how I managed to get past the divorce and provide a nice home for my son. By the end of the week, he was telling me how much I meant to him, that we were meant to be. He said he didn't want to go back to Vietnam. He wanted to stay and live life with me. He was convinced he had met his soulmate. He said he needed to work because his money was tied up in Vietnam. But he also said he could go work a contract in Alberta doing water hauling for the rigs for about 6 weeks. He said he could make enough money to get him settled back in Canada and arrange to get get his stuff back from Vietnam after selling his condo there. I was quickly falling for this guy. Andre planned to leave for Calgary around February 8th. He wanted to take the bus because he told me he was afraid of flying. I asked him how he flew back from Vietnam with that fear, and he said he took Ativan for the flight. The day before his trip to Calgary, he texted me telling me that his laptop died and he was stressing out because all his overseas work was on it, and he had been claiming to still be doing work online for the company. He asked me if there was any way I could help him get a new laptop so that he could work and get paid. I agreed to help him and got him a new laptop. He said he would pay me back as soon as he got some of his money from Vietnam. He also said he had a friend there that was going to travel to Thailand and wire him some money in a week. He then asked if I could also help him out with a bit of money to get him to Calgary and help pay for his certificates to get recertified for the rigs. He said he was doing it for us and that once his money came from Vietnam, we would all be squared up. He even created a spreadsheet of the money I had lent him, and I agreed. He kept telling me if I couldn't help him, he would have to go back to Vietnam and we wouldn't be together. Well, while in Calgary, he said he had some chest pain and spent the night in the ER. He caught the bus back to Kelowna 2 days later. When he got back, he said he would need to go back to Calgary to finish up his recertification. But that he managed to find two guys he knew in Calgary to go start the project while he got better. He stayed with me for a couple of weeks. He seemed to keep busy with work stuff and said he wanted to start up an online clothing store. He also said he had so many contacts in Vietnam to get product over here to sell. Now, he also spent lots of time on the phone with his workers in Alberta. He went back to Alberta 2 weeks later and said he finished his certificate and that he would be mailed and he would have it mailed to my address. So I was to watch for them. He continued to keep the other two guys on and said that he would make triple the money, so was excited to be making all that money in a short time. He talked about his traveling to South America in the fall, going to Vietnam to settle up his personal affairs together. I was excited. During the month of March, he continued to stay in Alberta, going between Edmonton and Calgary. He convinced me to rent Airbnbs. He said his job site did not offer rooms, but that he was given a living allowance. He said once he got paid, it would all be paid back. Then it came time to pay his two workers, and he said he would need to borrow that money from me until his check from the water hauling company came through. I spent hours on the phone with him, organizing his hours, invoicing, etc. I went to visit him for a weekend in March when he was back in Calgary, and we spent the weekend together, and it was a great time. He convinced me to stay an extra day and drive up to Edmonton with them. We would need to rent a car, so I did. When we got to Edmonton, he said his boss texted him and said he would need a car for work, so we had to rent an SUV or a Jeep for him to get back and forth to the rigs for the last 2 weeks of work. He also needed a new phone for work, so I got him a phone and added him to my plan. I rented the Jeep for him. He continued to call me daily, FaceTime me constantly, telling me how much he loved me, how much I was sacrificing for us to be together, and how excited he was to be starting a life with me. It all seemed legit. I was due to go to a wedding in Las Vegas at the end of March, and he told me to go and have a good time, and he would see me as soon as I got back. He said his contract was over April 2nd, so he would come straight back to Kelowna. On March 26th, he called me and said he got a check from the water hauling company. He said he wanted to deposit it right into my account so that I would feel better knowing that he paid me back. All my overdrafts were overdrawn, my line of credits were full, and all the money I had lent him, or with all the money that I'd lent him. I gave him access to my online account. I stayed on FaceTime with him while he deposited the check. I asked him why the check was handwritten, and he said it was because there had been a break-in at the office, so his boss had to quickly reissue a check, and so she handwrote it. The check was for over $49,000. The check went in, and I was excited to get my money back. I had lent him close to $40,000 between the bus tickets, car rentals, paying his staff, Airbnbs, food, etc. I was so stressed out then and relieved when the check went in. He kept saying, "See, I told you it would be all right." I left for my trip for Vegas with my son and our friends, and I tried texting Andre the entire time I was gone, and he never responded. I was very worried something had happened. I got home from Vegas on April 2nd and found that the check had bounced. He was nowhere to be found. I was devastated. All of my accounts were frozen. I had to get money from my friend to buy groceries for my family. I went to the police only to find out he had a very lengthy criminal record for fraud, several warrants out for his arrest across Canada for fraud. I was ruined. I wanted to end my life. How could I possibly survive having $40,000 stolen from me, as well as losing my love? I was so confused, hurt, afraid, alone. How would I tell my friends and family? I was in complete shock. It had been almost a year since meeting Andre. I have now found I have now found out just how awful a human being he is. I continue to have bad dreams. I constantly look over my shoulder when I'm out. I'm ashamed of myself. I'm angry at myself. And I struggle daily with trying to pay back the money he took on my fixed income. I met another victim in July 2018. She has been a great support. She met Andre on the train heading to Toronto at the end of March. My heart broke when I first heard her story. How could he move so quickly from one victim to another? It had only been a couple of days. I really meant nothing to this man. He set his sights on me from day one and used my weaknesses to his advantage and took advantage of my vulnerability and played me like a fiddle. I want to find this man and bring him to justice so that I can protect just one lady from having to experience the heartache and emotional turmoil that this man has created for me. I have since found out that he did not work while in Alberta. There were no other employees working for him. I tracked down the water company he claimed to have worked for, and they confirmed he only ever worked for them for 3 months in 2015. We tracked down the company that he ordered online checks from. The checks he ordered online matched the check that was written to me. We then matched his handwriting to the check. He had written the check himself from a false company with a forged signature. A true fraudster. I had been his victim from day one.